You're good. All right, and welcome. Ooh, you know what? I just noticed. Oh, never mind. I thought something weird happened over there. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome. Yeah, there you go. Make it sound like we got a huge crowd here. But we do have, we've got June and my mom and Marianne. Marianne ate early, so she's able to join us today. Awesome. Marianne and June are members of my previous congregation, and I've been trying to convince them that they would fit in so well up here, and that Ascension would be a perfect place for them. So they just need to come up here.
It's really warm here too.
Oh, it's yeah, it's deceptively warm. Even though don't listen to all the weather reports that are saying like it was -2 degrees yesterday. No, it's a dry cold, so it's not the humid cold. So it's better.
Warm this afternoon.
Was it?
Yeah, the sun was great.
Oh, see, I just I got out to go home and it was just cold. But I used to like the cold. See, it's good that I got called here when I did, because I love the cold. And I got called here, and I think I hit that some point in aging where all of a sudden a switch was flipped, and now I'm like, oh, it's cold. Welcome. All right, well, before we begin, Christine, let's go show them what they're missing out at home. This is, what is this, a brownie? Cheesecake. Brownie cheesecake. Brownie layer on the bottom and a nice, delicious, delectable chocolate cheesecake top. And it is very, very good. Marianne says it's the wrong time of the year to be convinced to move up here. You know, winter is only cold here for like, what, 4 months tops? At least more than half the year is beautiful. Oh my gosh, the summer's here. See, I'm convinced you got to come up here in the summertime.
Yeah. Because
then that's like, you know what? I can survive the winter for the gorgeous summers. And then you got to go to Mackinac and the UP to really be like, oh yeah, we're staying. Okay, anyway. Our Bible study tonight is just convincing a bunch of Southerners to move up to Michigan. Oh gosh, 4 months too many. Okay, so we are in. I didn't even intend to do it this way, but we finished off chapter 2 last week. Oh yeah, I was at home. We did it virtually. Mm-hmm. So tonight we're looking at chapter 3, and hopefully we can get through all of chapter 3, because we only have 2 more Wednesdays before Lent. So my grand plan about getting through both 1st and 2nd Peter, well, that's clearly not going to happen. We'll get through 1 at least. So Peter's been talking about kind of how we live as Christians, how we respond to the government, how we respond to authorities, how we respond to one another as Christians. And so now we're going to talk about the husband and wife relationship. So this is fun. So let's get the first slide up with verses 1 through 6. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see that your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair, the wearing of gold, or the putting on of clothing, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Okay, we're all good with that, right? All right, moving along. We don't need to expand upon that. Everybody gets that. All right, so the context, what are we dealing with here?
I
you know, the persecution of Christians is on the rise. You know, Christians are being persecuted. So the people who Peter's writing to, they're afraid, they're doubting, they're wondering if this is worth it. And so what Peter's been telling them is to conduct themselves in a way that is counterintuitive to what the Christians are going through. So like the emperor is persecuting you guys. So what do you do as Christians? You honor the emperor. You know, the whole society around you, you know, slaves and slavery and this, that, and the other. So what do you do as Christians? You honor and submit to your authorities, to your masters. You actually be better citizens than the people of your society. Show yourselves to be above all of this. And so, you know, there was part of what, you know, helps persecution is you inspire the fear of what you're persecuting, right? So these Christians, and part of what was being kind of portrayed about Christians is, you know, these Christians are going to destroy society. These Christians are bad. We must do away with them. They're an evil menace. They're this, that, the other. You know, I don't recall if it was at this time, but I know throughout history at various points in time, you know, Christians, you stay away from them. They're cannibals. Don't you know that in their services they eat flesh and blood? It's like, okay, yeah. But it's not like that. You know, taking something that we actually do, you know, we eat the body and blood of Christ. Yes. So somebody who wants to turn that around, pervert it, and make people afraid of it is say they are cannibals by their own admission. They eat the flesh and blood of, you know, of their leader every week in their service. They're these evil creatures. So beware of Christians. They will destroy our society. They want to take down the government. They want to destroy everything that has made Rome great. So what does Peter advocate? He says, okay, then show them that you can be better citizens to the government than they can be. Show them that you are better for the society than they are. Show them how much better at being good people you are because you've been made holy. You know, and he's basically, in the whole thing he's been building on is you are a holy people, you know, a priesthood of believers. You are a holy nation set apart. So because you are holy and set apart, show that. Live it out. Act like you are holy and set apart. You know, you don't act like it to become holy. You are holy, so show them. Okay? And this goes right into the marriage relationship. About submitting. So first we go with wives, submit to your own husbands. All right? And submission, I think I may have mentioned this before. Submission is in the Christian context is not about inferiority. It's not about, well, you must submit because you are the inferior, you know, spouse in this context. Submission in Christian parlance is sacrifice. You submit to one. Well, like husbands and wives, submitting to one another is giving yourself over to the ones, sacrificing everything you have for the other. And that's how every Christian relationship is defined. It begins with husband and wife, where, so like I as a husband, you know, I sacrifice I give everything I have to Heather. Like I do nothing for myself. Well, I don't think she's watching right now because she'd be typing furiously. Oh, really? Explain all those Big B cups in your office. Ideally, I give everything to her, leave nothing for myself. And she gives everything of her to me. So that way, I'm emptying myself out. So I lack everything, and I need because I've completely given away. Well, who supplies that but my wife? She supplies what I have given, okay? And not even reciprocal, because what she gives is different from what I give. Like as a husband, I provide, you know, this is going fundamentally the differences between men and women and husbands and wives, is that, you know, I give her love, affection, security, protection, you know, kind of these masculine husband kind of things. She provides, you know, care, honor, respect, the things that, you know, that men crave and need. So she provides that, I provide what she needs, and so we're both giving and sacrificing and providing what we need. Does that make sense? So then that's why, like, you know, how I say in the congregation, you know, we give, ideally how a congregation works is we're all giving to each other. So if somebody lacks something, then I say, I'm going to give you everything I can possibly give so that you don't lack. And I'm not worried about, well, how am I going to pay my bills because this person over here is now providing for me. It's this wonderful, awesome hippie commune kind of idea. Socialism run amok, right? Nobody likes that. But I mean, in this crazy sort of idea of us submitting to one another, sacrificing one another, that's how it works. Of course, it doesn't work because we're sinful human beings, and there's just no way we're ever going to do that. As much as, you can love another person, you're always going to have but I can't, give everything because I'm too afraid that I'll lose something. Anyway, so, looking at what he's saying is he's focusing on the wives. So submit to your husbands, okay, or be subject to your own husbands. And again, if this is going the way it should be, subjecting yourself to a husband is a good thing because he is sacrificing his whole life for you. So submitting to him is not placing you in a place of inferiority. It's you saying, I'm going to trust that you are going to lead in this household like Christ leads his church, which is to say, you will die for me. You will put your life on the line. You will empty yourself out and give me everything I need. Go husbands. That's why I always love it when we read either submit to your husbands or this passage and wives get kind of very frustrated. Like, oh, I don't like that idea. I'm like, hey, your husband is supposed to have nothing and he's supposed to die for you. So you're getting the better end of the deal. I mean, you don't have to die for your husband, so there. That's good. He submits so that even if they don't obey, they would be one without a word. So this is again kind of this idea of show your faith, show how you are set apart and holy, so that when somebody sees that, they will be moved by it and be like, what is going on here? I want to know about that. And so, that plants a seed that the husband will then see. If he's not following the word by your conduct, he will be inspired to. Again, ideally, in practice, doesn't always work, and we are sinful human beings, and this is what happens. When they see respectful, pure conduct, okay. And then this whole thing about do not adorn yourselves. Do not let your adorning be external. Let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, gentle, quiet spirit, yada, yada, yada. So, what this isn't saying, what Peter isn't saying here is, cover yourself up, be drab, don't put on any jewelry. Your only beauty should be inside. He's not saying that. He's saying let the beauty that predominates be this gentle spirit, the beauty that is, in you that God has nurtured. Because if you read it too literally, I mean, listen to this. Let your adorning, or do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair. So, okay, nobody has braided hair in here. Okay, good. So no braiding hair, no wearing of gold. I see some. Or the putting on of clothing. So you should be naked. This is a fun when you read the Bible too literally, which is fun because don't braid your hair, don't wear gold, don't wear clothes. Which, I mean, if we really held to that, we'd probably be bursting at the seams every Sunday. I mean, we'd be quite the spectacle, quite the gossip going around town. Like, hey, let's go to Ascension. They do some wild stuff, and we can say, and we are literally following the Bible here. So yes, wives. That's not what he's saying. He's saying let the beauty shine from within. And he uses the example of, he says, all the women of the patriarchs, like Abraham and Sarah. She submitted to her husband. She obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. If you go back and if you followed the morning prayer, we talked about Abraham and Sarah. Sarah was beautiful. I mean, that was the whole deal. That's why Abraham, when they went through the land and he had to say to people like, hey, don't kill me because she's not my wife, she's my sister. Sure, you can have her because she's just my sister. Don't kill me. Because he knew she was beautiful and the kings of the land would want to take her violently if necessary. So Sarah was beautiful. So it's not a condemning of outward beauty. It's just saying don't let that be the thing. And, well, kind of a big deal in society, in our culture, is outward beauty is the thing. And so this is a very counter kind of thing, but we're not saying like, oh, look like, poor little hags or something like that. Like, no, just, don't go out of your way to be like, oh, this is, don't place all of your self-esteem, all of your worth, your value in all this. Okay? That's not the point. And, okay, and then moving, we'll discuss this in a second, so let's move to the next slide. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives. That's a good start. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Okay, so husbands, love your wives, be understanding, and show honor. Okay, so this is good. So wonderful stuff. We should be doing this. Now, weaker vessel. They are the weaker vessel. Not meaning, again, he's not talking about inferiority, like, oh, she's, oh, poor woman. Like, any husband who knows, you don't want to, upset. Because, hell hath no fury as a woman scorned, right? We know this. But, and here's the beautiful thing, where he's talking about men and women. Okay, so in comparison, or compared to men in general, physically, women tend to be the weaker vessel, right? We're talking about physiology. We're talking about just kind of, this is the pairing, and this is why, usually the men are the ones who are the protectors, the ones who defend and all that. Now, of course, we're speaking generalities. I'm sure there's, bring in a female MMA fighter and she can wipe the floor with me. Bring in any woman, and you never know. But we're talking about how do we compare people? How do men kind of size one another up or others up, usually? What's it based on? How we look? Like, do guys look at other guys and be like, oh, he's handsome, I feel very insecure about myself? Some do. Or is it usually more like a physical, like, oh, man, I feel like I'm kind of small. I remember the first time I went to, when I was a kid, my dad took me to the airport. We were going to Utah, and the Lakers happened to be they were going somewhere. So you had the whole team coming through, and oh my gosh, they're giants. And I was a little kid. So, then when I was an adult and I went down to the Clippers to see a shoot around before the season, and my roommate and I, we went and came to get the autograph of the center. I forget his name. Oh my gosh, 7 feet tall. I was like, wow. Oh my gosh. Felt very inferior to that, because men generally see, physical attributes and like, okay, well, if you're bigger, more muscular, you are the superior, I'm the inferior, right? So this is how men regard one another. Okay? So when you're regarding your wife, understand that this is how you're going to see her. Okay? Likewise with women, where he focuses on what? Their appearance, right? How do women generally regard one another? And what do they like to, what do they focus on? Generally speaking. I'm not, again, generalities. Is it like appearances?
A lot.
It seems to be, in our society, that seems to be the thing, right? So he is kind of, you as a man, you see her as the weaker vessel. So you know what? Treat her like that. Not like, oh, woe is you, but hey, let me provide. Let me do everything for you. Let me protect you. Let me provide for you. So, he's saying work within, like, as a man, as a husband, treat her like that. Treat her like you would, because this is how you see her. Just like, in a similar vein, wives, don't, the inner beauty is what truly matters. and I can't. One thing, if you're married for any length of time, I mean, you find out real quick. It's like, what matters? As you get older, this all, the looks fade, right? The looks fade real quick. And if you are just going from a superficial standpoint and like, this is what brought you together, and it's like, well, we're going to look like this forever. It's like, okay, call me in a year. We'll see what's going on. That comfort sets in real quick. You're like, who am I supposed to impress? So it really is that inner beauty, that gentle spirit that is what is desirable. So for a woman, and the same thing. What do you look at? Well, you're looking at your attractiveness. Okay, that's the focus there. Well, don't worry so much about this. That's an important part for attraction, whatever. But for the long term, for real relationship, it's what's inside. It's that loving relationship. And it's just men and women are built differently. We're wired differently. There's a great book that I'm sure would probably be burned today, but kind of the thesis is men seek respect, women seek love. Not that men don't seek love, but I mean, what a woman needs in a relationship is to feel loved and cherished. What a man needs in a relationship is to feel respected, honored. Now, he wants love too. I mean, we all want those things, but it's just the ratio is just heavier on one than the other. And it's, I mean, we don't have to get all into it, but I mean, in my experience, it bears out. Men and women are fundamentally different. Anybody want to say differently? you have the floor. But it's just, anyway. So what he's saying here is, in all of this, is just like, hey, husbands and wives, understand who you are, what you are, who your husband, who your wife is, and what they are, and work with that. Come together, providing for the other what they need, and using what you have for that. And in that, you're going to show a different kind of relationship to all the world, to your society that you're in. They're going to see you and like, wow, so you actually love her, and or somebody, you love her and because and you love him because, well, why? He's not strong. She's not pretty. Whatever the reasons are, that people would look at that and say, well, what's going on there? It's like, well, no, because I love him, I honor him, I cherish her, I love her, I provide, and we're brought together and we sacrifice, we submit to one another. It's like, you submit to one another. Why? So there's a lot of stuff going on there that's just, I don't know. Before I keep babbling anymore, yes?
This sounds like a lot of law when I read it.
Mm-hmm.
Do this, do this, do this, do this. I'm losing the gospel in it.
Okay.
I always do with 1 Peter.
Okay. Well, not a problem. And if you didn't hear online, for some reason I can't find that little microphone that I've had out. I can't find it. It was here last week and now it's gone. So I don't know, it got put somewhere. So I'm using a different mic and it probably might not pick up. So what the comment was that we're hearing a lot of law here and not a lot of gospel. We'll pick up on the law. He'll get to it. I mean the gospel. He'll bring it through. And when you pick it up in isolation, this is a lot of law. When you pick it out in the whole context, it is coming from you are holy and set apart. And this is what it looks like. So when he's saying do these things, it is law, but it's not bad law, and it's not a misunderstanding of law. It's only the only way that this law goes bad, and where we don't is when we look at it and say, I must do this in order to be saved. I must do this for God to be happy with me. I must do this in order that blah, 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 blah. Rather than he's saying no, you are holy. You're a Christian wife and you're a Christian husband. So this is what that looks like. submit, subject, love, honor, cherish, yada, yada, yada.
It is true, though, that you must do it in order for God to be happy with you.
True, yeah, yeah. And that's the fun thing, is like, do you want to make God happy? Yes. Then do it. And the key is do it perfectly. Because he's not going to be happy if you just try. Because you've got to do it. And so the gospel then comes in, maybe not explicitly here, but the gospel would then be proclaimed like, and Christ forgives you. And you live in this cycle of forgiveness of, yes, I've tried, God, and I've tried to do it, and I tried to make you happy, and he says, well, you're not going to. And you say, I acknowledge this. Have mercy on me. He's like, I did. I gave you my son. Don't you realize this? Like, oh, yes, okay. And he forgives us, and we're like, okay. I remember. This is who I am, so I'm going to do this. And then we go off, and we lose touch with, like, oh, yeah. We get the law all convoluted and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, do we make God happy when we refrain from sin? Absolutely. Do we refrain from sin?
No.
Not exactly. Yes, God speaking to his Father. Funny that you should mention that. Yes. So Nate just said, perfect, thank you, that this is kind of like a father speaking and saying, like, if you do these things, things will go well with you. Which leads us perfectly into actually the next two things. But hold that thought, and this will actually handle what Mary and Leah are talking about too. So let's go to the next slide here. Finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Do not repay evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless. For to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. All right, so now you might hear that and hear, okay, so do these things, for to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. So we do these to obtain a blessing. All right. Okay. So, and he's saying like, okay, so all of you have unity of mind. He's talking about Christians together, sympathy, brotherly love, tender heart, all good stuff, right? Live in harmony, kumbaya, hold your hands, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So he says, but on the contrary, bless, for to this you were called. So you were called. Okay, so first, you were called. You were made holy. Okay, so we start there. That is gospel. You were called. You were made holy. It was not of you. You were brought into this. Okay? That you may obtain a blessing. So in doing these things, you may obtain a blessing. Well, we've already saw, or I haven't written anything. Huh, weird. We've already established that gospel is that we've been made holy. Okay? So obtaining a blessing in this context cannot mean that we will be saved more, that, whatever. But you go back to the whole context of what he's saying, like, live out your holiness. Not for your benefit, but for whose benefit? Neighbor, everyone else. That's why we do anything, is for anybody else. So what is the benefit that happens when we live like these things, going back to husband and wife, to unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love? When we live in this way, having unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, tender heart, humble mind, are we blessed in that?
Yep.
Like, well, God God likes that, right? But how do we see blessings practically?
We're loving our neighbor as we're living out the law.
We're living it out? I mean, doesn't it make life, honestly, a little bit less painful, easy, maybe joyful? That unbelievers might take notice of that and say, hey, I actually might want to know about what you're doing, because this looks, I don't know how you do it. Especially, I always tell people, when you're suffering, it's the best evangelism ever, is for an unbeliever to see you suffer as a Christian. To endure suffering and still have hope. To be convinced that, and not afraid of death, but like convinced that God has got you, and like, yes, this is horrible, but you know what? I rejoice. Nothing is more confounding to an unbeliever than that, because you are not suffering like you should be suffering. Okay? You are not enduring. Whatever you're doing is weird. Okay? So that you may obtain a blessing is not just for you, but for other people, that other people might take notice, that you might actually have things go well with you. And moving along to the next slide, please. For whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Right, that's quoting from Psalm 34. And this is exactly, so if you desire to love life and see good days, then keep your tongue from evil. Keep it, all right, all this stuff. Fourth commandment, you shall honor your father and mother, right? Which expands to the authorities over you. Luther in his catechism actually points out that this is the first commandment with a promise. If you go to where the fourth commandment talks about in Scripture, it says, honor your father and mother so that it will go well with you and you will live long in the land. Okay. This is not necessarily like, okay, well, if you do this, then God will, parcel out long life and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, oh, okay, life will be great. But this whole thing of like, hey, well, if you don't speak evil, guess what? You don't have to worry about people freaking out. Like, if you don't lie, you don't have to worry about getting caught in a lie. If you don't cheat on your spouse, you don't have to worry about your spouse catching you cheating on them. I mean, it's like such a simple little thing. If you don't steal, guess what? You're not going to prison for stealing. You don't have to worry about that. If you don't cheat on your taxes, you don't have to worry about the IRS calling you up and saying, hey, you cheated on your taxes. There is a very fundamental common sense sort of thing here where it's like, you know what? If you avoid evil, now that's not to say evil won't find you. It's not saying that it's going to be, it's solid, that you're free from it. But you don't have to worry about your bringing it upon yourself. To a certain degree, we have to acknowledge that, evil happens, wickedness happens, bad stuff is going to happen from outside. But if we refrain from causing it ourselves, hey, one less thing for you to worry about. If I drive to work recklessly, I'm taking a risk that I'm going to cause an accident, okay? Now, if I drive to work perfectly safe and very carefully, I acknowledge that somebody else might hit me, but at least I'm not going to be at fault. I know that. So there is a fundamental thing here, which Nate brought up, is like, yes, a father is saying, like, do these things. And it's, I love the simplicity and kind of the common sense of it all, because, I mean, it is a father talking to little kids who don't know anything. Like we tell our kids, like, don't touch that, because it'll burn you. We're not saying like, oh, don't touch it or else I will condemn you. No, as a parent, you say, no, I love you. I don't want you to be hurt, so don't touch this thing that'll hurt you. And what do children do? Touch the stupid thing. And then you have a choice. You either like, dummy, or like, oh, see, yeah, told you, or like, oh, come here, let me make it better. Those are your three main options, depending on your day. But yeah, that's what we are. Even in our old age, we're still dumb kids with God. So when He gives us law like this, and of course we hear law and we don't like law, and even as little kids, I don't like your rules. I don't want to live in your house anymore. This is what we do all the time when we hear the law. We hear God's law preached, and we're like, I don't like the law. I don't want to do. I don't want to love my neighbor. Blah, blah. Like, we're just dumb kids. Same thing. So God, when He proclaims the law to us, maybe it's because He's bringing it down on us, because it's like sometimes you've got to bring the law down, to like, Sheba, don't do that. More often than not, when He bears the law, it's because He's like, okay, come here, kids. All right, let me refresh your memory here. Okay, that's bad. This is good. Okay, choose this. Okay, and in that context, it's not like the traditional, like, giving the law. Like the burden of the law, and God saying, you must do this to be my child. He's saying, He's outlining it and saying, okay, bad, Good. Okay? Do this.
This is,
I created you for this.
this is law as guide.
Yeah, yeah. Third use of the law. Yeah.
Oh, duh.
And the third use, we've got the three uses of the law. It's a mirror,
Curb,
curb,
guide.
and guide. The first two uses of the law are for everybody. Well, I mean, all these are for the first two are for everybody. The mirror shows us our sin. You know, the law says, like, you wouldn't know what sin is if not for the law. Okay, so the law says this is bad, so mirror, and I see that I'm bad because I don't follow it. Curb is to restrain the evil. You know, murder is bad. So not only to show you, but to keep everybody else like, okay, in line. The guide portion comes in only for Christians. Okay, this is what the Holy Spirit works. So the law before you come to faith does these things exclusively. Now, when you're a Christian, it still does these things. But now we get this added little bonus of a third use, which is a guide. Which now we see the law, when you just see the law here, it is a burden. Even though the law is good, because the law is simply God's will. God says this is good, this is bad. That's essentially what the law is. Do this, don't do that. When we're in this, it only feels like a burden, because we don't like being told what to do or what not to do. But when we're in faith, the Holy Spirit shows us, like, because it's shown us our sin and brings us Christ and forgiveness, we now see, like, wait a second. Oh, so the law is actually good for me and shows me how God would have me live. So this is not a burden. It's actually it's what I was created to do. This is how I was made.
I'm having a hard time distinguishing between guide and curb.
Curb is only meant to stop things. So like in general, a law would say don't murder. And Luther will expand on this too. So killing is sinful, obviously. So murder is bad, sinful. So the law says thou shalt not murder to stop that evil from happening. So the Holy Spirit now works in this, and we see that, okay, and Luther will expand on this in the Catechism. He says, okay, yes, the commandment says thou shalt not murder. So what does this mean? Well, we don't murder, obviously, but what it means is we now look out for our neighbor to protect them. So not only does it restrain our behavior, but it actually guides us to say, okay, now I'm going to actively preserve my neighbor's life. I'm going to go out of my way to protect them. Just like bearing false witness. That's a good one. Bearing false witness. So don't slander. Don't say mean things about people. Curb. Keeps you from gossiping, keeps you from talking smack. The guide portion says, not only do you not do it, but now you take the best construction on everything. So when you hear your neighbor say something stupid, you don't automatically think, well, they're an idiot. Guilty. But you actively say, you know what? And even if I can't understand what the good is, I'm going to let me go to them and find out what's behind that. Because I'm not going to automatically think that they said something horrible. I'm going to say, you know what? Maybe I just misunderstood. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe whatever. But it actively, it goes beyond just the curb to more of an active preservation. I mean, it's not exactly a clear-cut kind of thing. But yeah, it just kind of transforms it a bit and pushes it out more. Curb is more inward, I think. Guide is more out. So yeah, so this is all that Peter's doing. So Mary, to what you were saying, how when you read 1 Peter, it's all very law. It's like, well, yeah, there's a lot of it. But it's not that burden law. It really is, it is the guide law. And it always begins with you are, and even in the text, you are a holy people, meaning Christ has died for you. He has saved you. He has brought the gospel to you. You are redeemed. So now, this is what being redeemed looks like. And for the benefit of other people. Not only in your relationships that we act for the good of each other, or the marriage, we act for the good of the spouse, but even in the society where we act for the good of the unbeliever, of the enemy. That everything we do and how we show this life, it is to show them what it looks like to be holy. And ideally, it brings them to say, hey, what's up with that? Like, why do you not rage against this, that, and the other? Like, oh, because I'm not worried about this. Why aren't you afraid of dying? Like, let me tell you. How much time you got? That's when you say, let me tell you about Jesus. So yeah. Any other thoughts or comments about up to that point? It's awfully quiet online. I don't know about you guys. Oh, you know what? I'll bet they're looking up real estate listings for Michigan because they're all planning to. From our opening discussion of why you want to move up here. That must be it. So close your other browser tabs and say. Waiting for the comments to roll in on that one. Okay, anyway. All right, well, let's move ahead then. We'll see what we do. Okay, next slide. Should be verse 13. Is that right? Okay. Now, who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. Okay, so leading on from what he's doing, he's calling them to acts of service to one another, to love one another, to do all these things. And he's telling them to do this to, so act this way, live this way in the face of people who are actively trying to kill you. Now, oh, there's a comment. Mary Ann's comment. I used to be shocked when I heard, Lord, take me now. The older I get, the more I understand it. Yeah, funny thing about that, right? Well, this is why Pastor Kroll always says, growing old is a blessed thing. You understand a whole lot more about faith and Scripture and the giving over to God the older you get. Absolutely. So, Peter's telling them this is how you live life in the face of people who want to kill you, and he's anticipating the protest, but what's the point? Because it's not going to change them. They're just, if we submit to them, they're just going to take advantage of us. This is extreme pacifism, and why, we've got to do something. We can't just be little quiet pacifists here, okay? This is crazy. Now, this is fun. That they're saying this to Peter is the one talking to them, and he's the one who, in the garden, what does he do? And cuts off the ear of the servants. He's the first one to draw the sword, right? And now Peter is telling them, no, just, come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Was that, who sings that? Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another.
1969.
That's not Buffalo Springfield. No, that's no. Who said that? I don't know. Somebody online, Google that. Come on, that's gonna bug me. Okay, anyway, while we're waiting for somebody to answer that question.
It's always interesting what Jesus infuriated and described so much, but he didn't come out and say things directly in an anger type of way.
Right.
This is what you really mean. You can twist the words back around.
Yes.
They would get so angry.
Yes,
All
yes.
he would do is repeat back to them the craziness.
Right, right. For you online,
This is a good way to protest.
Nate was pointing out how Jesus would often use the Pharisees and the scribes and what they would say and just not in anger or anything, but turn it back around and show them how it's like, no, this is wrong, using their own words. Oh, the young bloods. There we go. The young bloods. Okay, good. Whew. All right. Won't have that hanging over our head. But so back to what Peter's saying here in 13 and 14. So he's like, okay, so who is there to harm you? So they're worried about, if you're zealous for what is good and you're worried about the people who are going to harm you, who are going to do terrible things to you. And he says, okay, if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you'll be blessed, right? Because, well, and not even like, okay, when you suffer, you'll be blessed. Like, oh, suffer and God will give you a cookie. You're blessed in your suffering because that brings you closer to Christ. I mean, we experience Christ way more when we suffer than any other time. Truly. We are brought close to, when we're brought to the cross, right? I mean, it's always talking about coming to the cross, right? Well, how do we join with Christ at the cross? Is through suffering. So that's, we're blessed because we're brought closer to Christ, because when we're suffering and we don't know what to do or we can't do anything, we say, Lord, have mercy. Save me now. This is good. But he says, have no fear of them, nor be troubled. So he says, trust in God. Oh, you're going to die. Okay. Why are you afraid of dying? Oh, you're gonna be in pain. Why are you so? His whole point is like this life, this world is passing away. You have nothing to be afraid of. Are you afraid of Rome? Why? They can hurt you. They can kill you. That's nothing. Crazy radical way of looking at it, but this is and man, I don't know why. I mean, I've always heard this, but I always kind of like, I don't like catchphrases. But I really like this one. For some reason, I've been going back to this a lot lately. I hate catchphrases. I love this one. Let go and let God. I don't know how old this one is. It goes back quite a few decades, I would assume. I don't know, like, what would Jesus do? I hate that one. Sometimes it fits. I love the little thing I've seen this little picture where it's like, what would Jesus do? It's like, sometimes the answer is flip over some tables and beat people with cords. There's always that option. But I really like let go and let God, because this is what Peter's talking about. He's like, so what? What are you afraid of? Let go of your fear of this, because God has made you whole. He saved you. Let go of what you're clinging to and cling to Christ alone. Let go and let God. Let him be the one to worry about this stuff. He can handle it. If you come before God and say, Lord, I can't handle this. Like, good. That's where you're supposed to go. He can handle it. Sure, give it to him. He'll do a better job than you will. So it's beautiful stuff that he's saying here. This is where gospel comes in. Because, especially capping off this whole, submit to your husband, love your wife, honor the government, live in unity and harmony and all this stuff. And they're like, well, I'll do this, but there's no guarantee my husband's going to do this. There's no guarantee the government's going to do this. There's no guarantee anybody's going to react well to any of this. So what's the point? He says, what are you worried about? You're worried about that somebody might not respond or reciprocate what you're putting out there? Like, God gives you everything. This is the guy who has given you all that you need, who loves you perfectly, that will never change. So, like in the marriage relationship, you're like, well, I'm not sure, I'm not going to give 100% to my spouse because I don't feel that they'll love me back. Now, I don't want to get into, the nitty-gritty there, because that's a fun topic, because there are definitely some places where it's like, well, hey, you need to love that person, we can talk. But I mean, the fear of like, well, I'm not going to put myself out there because of what I might not get back. You say, well, look at what he's given you. He's given you all this stuff. He loves you perfectly. He's given you life. You're worried about dying. Why? He gave you this life. And he's prepared an everlasting one that begins right when this one ends. I mean, I love the, I don't know how it's going to work. My conception of it is that you close your eyes, you die, you take your last breath, you close your eyes, and immediately you open them up again. It's like you blink. And all of a sudden, it's either you're in heaven and you see Jesus, or it's the resurrection. And it just like happens like that because time gets all wonky when you're in heaven. So either way, it's like it's a continuum. Or, and this, honestly, I think this is even better. Maybe you sleep. Oh. And maybe the resurrection doesn't happen for another 10,000 years. 10,000 years of sleep sounds glorious. I'm down for that. And then you wake up and it's paradise? Okay. I don't see the problem here. Bring it. Let's make this happen. So either way, it's like there's just, and the fear of death for us is just not a thing. Now we fear death, of course, because we're sinful human beings, and all we can see is there's a doorway there that we can't see past. Except we can. Through his word, he's given us this promise that is sure and certain. So, death for us is like, yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of there. So nothing this world can throw at us, nothing the world can take away from us, can't take away the life that we have in Jesus Christ. So when we die, the worst possible thing is either, like I said, you close your eyes and open them up again immediately, and you're done. And it's eternity. Or you close your eyes and you sleep, which is fabulous. And then you open your eyes, and it's eternity. Either way, take your pick. Depending on the day, I vacillate between
Well, that's
sleeping
more
and waking up.
gospel. That's more gospel than I thought was in 1 Peter.
Oh, yeah, gospel's everywhere here. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, so he's got, like, almost a full chapter of, this is law, technically. And then when we get 2 verses, which is like, have no fear of them, nor be troubled. And we'll get into a little bit more. We've got a couple minutes, so. Yeah, let's move ahead to the next slide. Okay. But in your hearts, regard Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it in gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, notice when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good, if that should be God's will, than for doing evil. So, so even this, but in your hearts regard Christ the Lord as holy. So set up Christ apart in your heart as Lord, which is remind yourself that he is Lord. He has conquered this all. He has claimed victory over it all. There's nothing for you to worry about or be afraid of. And so when somebody comes to ask and to challenge you and like, well, why do you believe this? This is foolish, this is nonsense. Be ready to give a reason for the hope. The reason is the cross. If you're, be ready to make a defense. That always freaks people out, like, oh no, I don't know what to say. The Apostles' Creed. There you go. If you ever in a situation where you need to describe or explain your faith to somebody, they want to know, like, tell me what you believe. Apostles' Creed. Say it. That's it. I mean, you can stop and you can explain as you go, like, okay, I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe that there is a God who created all of this. Most people will agree. I mean, even, you might get a hardened atheist who's like, no, everything is big, you can have fun with that. It's like, well, then, you go back far enough, there has to be somebody who created something. Like, you don't all of a sudden just get boop, things out of nothing. So there's just, but whatever. So, there is something. Hydrogen. Well, see, and even that, it's like, so there's some common ground. So, my God is Yahweh, who, maker of heaven and earth. Your God is hydrogen, who combined and boom, okay, fine. Let's start there. We have common ground. Let's move. And then, and I believe in Jesus Christ, his only son, our Lord. Oh, okay. Well, he had his son. God had his son. Okay, well, what was that all about? We can talk about sin, death, all this stuff. And then go through. He was born, suffered, died, was buried, all this stuff. And I believe in the Holy Spirit. And he is the one who sanctifies me. So, I mean, it takes you through the whole thing. very easy, you know, this is the crib note version of faith. So he's saying, like, okay, so share with people that. Share the gospel. You know, do it gently, respectfully, you know, and this is good common sense advice. You know, people will listen to you more if you are gentle and respectful. I mean, if you come across like, well, you just don't know anything, and I'm holier than thou, blah, 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 it's like, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to be receptive. So do it gently, do it humbly. Do it like, well, here's the fun thing. You know, and we don't argue with them, because you can't argue somebody in the faith. But the cool thing is, like, you know what? So they're being hostile or antagonistic to you because of your faith. So respond to them. So they're setting themselves as your enemy. So love them and talk to them like you want them to be with you forever. Which is the radical kind of concept. It was like, okay, you're my enemy, you hate me, and I want to spend eternity with you. Which is basically what we're doing. Is we're going to people who hate us, who can't stand us, and we probably can't stand them either, if we're being perfectly honest in our sinful flesh. And we're saying, and I want you to know this so that you can be with me forever. Because I never want to be apart from you. And neither does God. This God that you hate. It is pretty wild. But I mean, that's, you know, this whole kind of reorienting the approach is just to show you just how completely, you know, this twists everything and gives you a whole different perspective. And, well, and even still, it's like, and for us, it's so radical and like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Well, trust that God is in charge here and he's running the show. And if you think, how can I do this? Well, you know what? Trust God. Let go, let God. You know what? Just, and this is where the law kind of comes in. It's like, just do the law. Not for you, for your neighbor. Just do it. Gently, humbly, share it. And then don't worry about how you're going to make it happen, because God will. Oh, yeah, Marianne says that opens up a whole new avenue. Yes, it does. And it does wonders for us, too. Because, I mean, and we'll have to end on this one, which is unfortunate because the next one is baptism now saves you, but we need a lot more time to talk about that. So, and that's where some of the good gospel comes in that you have been missing in your previous experiences with 1 Peter here. Is that, what was I going to say? Just that everything, you know, and we even see ourselves as us and them. You know, we're always pitted against other people. And especially today, politics, oh my gosh, you know, they're the enemy. You want to destroy, blah, 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 blah. And we're always just, and even just fundamentally family units, you know, it's us, we're family, and outside, and blah, blah, blah. The cool thing about all of this is that it just totally breaks down all this stuff so that we are forced to then see, like, okay, you are not actually my enemy. You know, my struggle is not with you. It's not with flesh and blood. You're not my enemy. So I can love you and reach out to you because I'm going to let go and let God redefine. Well, not even redefine. He defines it. He doesn't have to redefine anything. We just have to listen and let him remind us, like, this is who you are. You know, you don't have enemies. Your enemy is sin. Your enemy is not that person. That's the person you need to want to spend eternity with. And it just completely redefines everything for us and sets us on a whole different, it's cool stuff. It's fun stuff. Any comments about anything from tonight? From all this stuff? More gospel than you thought, huh?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can read this stuff hell-bent to hear the law and then have it crush you. And I mean, yeah, if you're just hearing all of this as a mirror, I mean, yeah, the law is damning. Like, yeah, all this stuff about how we act and submit and whatever, when it does the mirror work, it's like, ugh, I feel terrible. I don't want to talk to my neighbor about this stuff. I don't want to, I want to be one of those Jesus people who talks about Jesus all the time. I don't want to do any of this stuff, and I don't want to. So it's always going to burden you.
Where would it fit in when we read the beginning of 1 Peter where it says, wives, submit to your husbands, and then women traditionally, at least where I'm from, been treated like doormats, and that's your role in life. Is
Right.
give the male authority what he wants, let your back be wiped all over, and just, be walked on.
Right.
That's what you're supposed to do. So
Where?
how,
Well, that's like, what's
in the law, what would that use of the law be? Is that just abuse?
That's just abuse.
Thank you.
Because, at no point is that's not what Peter is saying. He's not saying the going back to the whole let your conduct be pure so as to win your husband. That's not to the point where it's like, so your husband's beating you and you're just supposed to be like, no, I'm submitting to this and hopefully you'll get it. At that point, that's kind of like and he needs to, at that point, the wife does not need to hear the law. The husband needs to hear the law, which is, you are Christ to the church in this relationship. Did Christ ever do these things to the church? Or did Christ submit himself to the church and die for the church and provide and love and cherish the church? For the husband who's not doing the word, it's either like an unbeliever or, in just even random little, everyday sorts of things. It's not going to cover every potential situation. Just like when Jesus, and actually I was reading a commentary in prep for Sunday, when he's going to talk about when Jesus says in Matthew 5 where he talks about divorce and all this stuff, he's not saying and this is how you apply it to every situation. He's saying these are the general ideas here. So you've heard it say, you shall not murder. I say when you think, you fool in your head. He's not saying okay, you can't think, you fool. That's a no-no. He's saying look, think well of people. He's not saying okay, this is how it fits in every situation. He's giving the general rule for okay, this is how you apply this in general. It's not the end-all be-all to everything. So even in this, when Peter says, okay, now wives submit to your husbands, where it's abused is when they say, oh, this is the rule for everything. So,
It's always been really the reverse, right? You come into something, you fool. What I should be thinking is, this is something that you don't know about. It's my responsibility to provide some insight.
Sure.
God will hold me responsible if I don't do what I can
Right.
to improve the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's my right to call fault with you.
Right.
It's my responsibility to figure out what's missing.
Right. Yeah. So in
I think that's really an important aspect. But we usually only take the first step.
Yeah. And to put it into that the relationship where one is being abused, if somebody came to me and said, but I need to submit, I say, no, you need to get out. And this kind of this kind of goes to the idea of we don't always pursue the greater good, we pursue the lesser evil, and we say, you know what, in this I'm going to sin. So because you can take that and say, okay, in this somebody's being abused in a relationship. Okay, well, and they're saying, but you must submit. See, it says submit. Okay, so if you're not submitting, you're sinning. It's like, okay, valid. But if you're abusing, guess what? You're sinning. Okay? Okay, well, so I would tell this person, leave. I'd tell this person, first, stop. Well, tell this person, get away from that. And let's deal with this apart from, pull that away. And if that's something we can't deal with, then you know what? You leave for good. Oh, but that's a sin. It's like, we're dealing with sin. So what, you're going to tell the person to stay and be abused? Suffer through this sin? And you're going to complain that, well, divorce is a sin? It's like, it's all sin. Okay? But this is being the more damaging thing, is this person who is abusing. So, so yeah, that's why you can't just take this stuff and like clamp it down to every scenario, especially when it talks about the husband and wife relationship. I mean, in the fall into sin, I mean, that got broken, and that relationship was the first. So I mean, that's going to be the foundational thing that is conflict and strife, and we got to watch out for that. That's why we should be more careful about these things. That's why we should be looking out for one another in the church and for supporting spouses and families, and to not enable things like that, and to provide more support for that, which sadly it doesn't happen a lot. And why, you know, we can't just be like, oh, well, no, you must just stand by your man. It's like, no. Stand by your husband unless he's abusing you. I mean, like, then he's not your husband at that point, because he's not Christ in that relationship. Okay, well, I'm being played off now. Sorry, Alex. All right, we'll continue this discussion next week. Thank you for joining us. It's choir time.